Good morning or good afternoon, everyone, depending on where you're joining us from, and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Nick from Business Review, and I will be your host. Now, it is our pleasure to have Astrix with us today, who will be presenting their webinar titled Impact of Digital Transformation on Quality and Compliance. And I'd like to welcome you all to our webinar platform titled On24. You'll notice that this webinar platform is browser-based, so if you do disconnect for any reason or encounter any problems, please just click on the link that you received via your email to rejoin the session. Now, in order to ask any questions at all, you can send them in via the questions widget, which should be in the top right-hand side of your screen. Just type them into the box at the top corner and click submit. Now, if you do need any help at all, there is a yellow help widget, which should be in the bottom-hand side of your screen. And feel free to move, resize, maximize any of the windows in front of you to get a better view of the slides. But for now, please allow me to welcome Kevin.
Great, thank you very much. Again, this is Kevin Miller with Astrix. I'm going to do a couple of quick introductions of Astrix technology before I introduce our speaker for today, Vamsi. So before we get into that, just again, thank you for joining us for today's session entitled The Impact of Digital Transformation on Quality and Compliance. Before we get into the actual presentation portion, I wanted to take a few minutes and tell you a little bit about who Astrix is if you're not familiar with us or if you haven't been in any of our webinars in the past, which is possible, then it would be good for us to at least give you a baseline and understanding of who we are and what it is that we do. We are a company that successfully delivers highly specialized services, processes, technology, as well as outsourced services to fundamentally transform how science-based businesses operate. It's all done in an effort to improve scientific outcomes in the lives of people everywhere. We are a professional services company. We were established in 1995 and are privately held today. We originated as the IT division of a company called APBI, which is a life science research organization. We operate from 7 offices in the United States and beautiful Costa Rica, and our headquarters are in Red Bank, New Jersey. We are a market leader in dedicated digital transformation services and expert outsourced services for the scientific community. We very much specialize in certain types of companies, Fortune 1000 life sciences, chemical CPG, government research institutions, generally speaking, organizations with large and fast-growing IT, outsourced, or regulatory compliance needs are those that we help the most. In terms of these solutions, we deliver a very broad set of solutions, and as we like to say, our services span the complete life cycle of your scientific data systems needs. And this includes the very beginning from when we engage with customers. We help them really understand the type of technology that they need to move forward with their business, to scale their business, to grow their business, to modernize their business. And we do this through business process analysis and enterprise architecture. This is where we help people understand, what their technology direction needs to look like to meet their business needs, where we certify your project begins with the right strategic direction. From there, we go into laboratory and quality management selection services. We pick or help you pick the right technology stack to meet those needs. From there, we can help with development and implementation. And once complete, we can even help and complete computer system validation. We can also provide 360 digital quality services. These are where we can deliver on-demand services to help you ensure your quality operations are running efficiently and ensuring that you are completely compliant with things like FDA guidance. We are also able to provide on-demand specialized staffing. So we can provide staffing in the lab, we can provide staffing on the business side, we can provide staffing on the IT side of the fence to kind of round out that offering. So that's a little bit about us as a company. Now I'd like to introduce Vamsi. Vamsi is our Director of Digital Quality and Compliance with Astrix. He's a solution-oriented senior life sciences professional. He brings 20 years of advisory experience helping companies deliver compliance-focused business process improvement solutions, as well as quality and manufacturing systems implementations, which he's done globally. He specializes in leadership, program and project management, regulatory compliance, as well as technology solutions and business process design. His experience includes everything from large, complex, global scale projects to IT strategy and development to operating model development to program management office and mergers and acquisitions, etc. So a really broad scope of experience that Vamsi brings. We're thrilled to have him on our team, and I'm thrilled to introduce him to you. And Vamsi, I'll let you take it from here, and I'll come back on at the end.
Thank you so much. Hello, everyone. Thank you for the introduction, and thank you all for joining. Well, We have a very interesting topic today that we'd like to spend some time on. Primarily, what digital transformation does to the area of quality and compliance. From a digital quality perspective itself, when we talk about life sciences organizations, digital quality has become more of a necessity today rather than just an aspiration, right? Given the fact that the business processes are evolving and getting more complex, distributed, and global. And if we've learned anything over the last close to 2 years, the whole way that we deal with IT systems and therefore their operations, implementations, and maintenance has given us more and more reason to digitize most of our processes. So enabling those right foundations in terms of the elements that are put into processes and agreeing upon a roadmap for the digital quality itself is critical for success and therefore business growth. In a recent survey that was conducted, close to 16% of our respondents had a clear and compelling connection between quality and corporate strategy, making this in a way an excellent opportunity to change the perception and therefore achieve the results that we're looking at. Now, when we start talking about digital transformation itself, there's a couple of things that we want to keep in mind and that we will get to a little more detail as we go through the presentation today. One is we start looking at quality transformation itself, right? We start looking at where are we going to take our quality to from what it is today? What are we going to invest in? What are the areas that we want to invest in? The second is technology. The ability to leverage technology to bring in efficiencies and optimization across the value chain, across the processes that we follow, and also making sure that the technology is giving us the results that we want in a more controlled, compliant fashion. And technology is not just going in and automating, so to speak, right? It's actually bringing in improvements in the productivity of the organization, and therefore, in some way, shape, or form, driving the business impact that an organization has. The third is changing the focus of the quality organization to the enterprise. Quality, unfortunately, in certain cases, has always been an afterthought. And it's very heartening today to see that perception is changing. And that perception is changing because of the increase in the maturity levels of the quality organization itself. Quality having a seat at the table when decisions are made on programs, on processes, and projects, and being able to clearly differentiate between the business needs, the IT needs, and the regulatory needs, and being that voice of reason, so to speak. The other item that really drives digital quality is the data aspect of it. I mean, as you start digitizing processes and applications and everything else, you are now going to be dealing with a lot more data. And data, when not structured or not collected or not analyzed properly, is no use. So when you start getting into data analysis, understanding the messages that the data is providing and therefore being able to use those to an organization's advantage is also critical. And the next item that we wanted to touch upon is looking at data flows. There are a lot of organizations that we've dealt with where there's a disparate number of systems, unfortunately not talking to each other, as they say. Right? There is data in the doc management system, there's data in the QMS, there's data in the change management system, but all of that data, unfortunately, is not talking. They're not connected. So the idea is to be able to organize that data and use it in a closed loop fashion. So data from all of these systems can be used very efficiently and in a way that brings in that business value that we talked about earlier. And finally, I think what is most important for the quality organization today is the opportunity to build what we call a culture of quality and move away from being a reactive organization to more of a proactive one. And what that does is it reduces the amount of time that the quality organization spends in fixing issues and moves that effort into predicting issues that can be prevented in the first place, right? More in terms of effort, time, resources, whatever you have. And that is critical as we start looking at moving into the digital quality realm. So when you start talking about some of the forces that are driving a shift to digital quality, there's 4 or 5 that I'd like to highlight here. The first one, as I mentioned earlier, is moving away from traditional quality to what we refer to as quality 4.0. And what quality 4.0, more on the lines of industry 4.0 and therefore pharma 4.0, are dealing with today is forcing that shift to digital to lower the cost of quality, improve the product quality, and therefore improve patient safety as the net goal. And how do we do this, right? How do we make sure that we shift to quality 4.0? We start looking at silos and technologies and skill sets across the organization and trying to understand and redefine what those are, right? So we start worrying about how can we break down the silos? How can we start looking at technology as an enabler rather than something that is just there to be used? And obviously the skill sets, the skills that are required of the organization in 6 months, 12 months, 18 months require us to invest in our people today so that they're ready when those technology trends are implemented and used across the organization. And also what is critical is moving from a strategy belief and execution. So don't just focus on execution, but have a roadmap, right? What we've seen is strategy is set, but execution has always been siloed. And there is a lack of a tie back to that strategy across various of groups within an organization. So how do we go in and propagate the learnings that we have across the organization? And also trying to stay away from just the shiny new object syndrome, right? So basically going in and saying, oh, we have this huge, cool looking AI application, but is that something that is in response to a business need, or is that something just to showcase the IT prowess of your organization? So having those conversations, while some of them are difficult, but making it a part of our roadmap, right? The next item, and there is something that is called the computerized system assurance, right? I mean, all of us are familiar with CSV, computerized system validation, but the FDA and other health regulatory bodies are now slowly recognizing the fact that CSV has lived its life, so to speak, right? There is actually a guidance put out by the FDA on computerized system assurance, where they're basically going in based on industry input, based on conversations they've had with system implementers, industry, and everybody else across the organization and life sciences overall, have gone and said, we need to move away from just doing CSV for the sake of doing it, more of a documentation exercise, but rather to add value to what we're doing. And how do we do that? We go in and start looking at a new way to do validation. That new way focuses on critical thinking and targeted testing. So we're changing the standard V model or waterfall or agile methodology that we're currently used to bring in more in terms of the type of testing we do. For example, or we're going in and looking at a risk-based approach more from a requirements perspective. And how do we do that is through the leverage of technology. And what does that give us at the end of the day? It lowers cost. So the cost of quality goes down. The other way to reduce costs overall is to look at, as systems are moving more and more to a cloud-based environment and moving away from an on-prem environment, is to look at your supplier quality. As you leverage systems on the cloud, for example, can we actually go in and leverage a lot of documentation that these vendors and suppliers provide to us? And how can we go in and do that to reduce our cost? So some of these forces that are driving that shift, again, every organization will have a different mix and a different prioritization to each of these, but it's critical to look at it holistically and look at all of these rather than just one of them. So let's spend a little more time on some of those shifts and what we talked about. So when we start talking about Quality 4.0, I talked about the lowering of the costs and improving product quality. But how does that really happen? It happens because we're now looking at involving technology, involving process optimization, and using the power of data to drive decisions. And as a result, the expectation is that we improve the overall patient safety that we deliver as part of an organization. So from a technology and skill set perspective, we need to start looking across systems and across the quality organization when we start worrying about data. And we need to talk about going in and implementing systems that actually speak to each other, where data exchange is possible. Data can be leveraged across each of those systems. And the second also is going in and talking about leveraging technology itself, right? When you have organizations that are global and you have multiple lines of business or sectors or regions within the organization, it's often found that there is one particular system used for a process in one area versus a totally different system used for the same kind of process in a different area. Now, what that does is, while it gives you the automation or the technology component, it prevents you from leveraging learnings and data across the organization. And how do we do that? We start going in and harmonizing technology across the enterprise, across the organization. And to use technology, we need to make sure that our team is prepared. They have the right skill sets. So there is a shift today of bringing in data scientists. They're bringing in automation experts into the quality realm because they bring in that skill set, or retraining existing folks to understand that technology. And using that, you can actually go in and bring in efficiencies that are otherwise being missed on a day-to-day basis. From a strategy and execution perspective, we talked about most of these. The one thing that I'd really like to stress upon is no strategy is good enough if the execution fails. Right? At the same time, there has to be a loop-back system to each and every strategy. There has to be a way to keep honing that strategy or modifying or changing based on what we see as part of our execution. So it has to be a closed-loop system, and success cannot be just executing as is. we have to be able to learn and understand what's happening with each of those kind of processes. So spending a little time on CSA itself, why did CSA even come into the picture? CSV, validation by itself, wasn't working. And what wasn't working? It was perceived as a barrier to new technology. There were multiple conversations I have had with many of my clients and organizations where validation is an afterthought and it's more, or it's an added cost. And why was that? Because the perception was that validation only produced excessive and non-value adding documentation. And it basically went and increased the overall cost of the program or the project, and also the timelines. And the last thing was validation was perceived to have not kept in step with the technology that was being implemented. So for example, when an AI system was being implemented, how do you go in and validate an AI process? It's not a standard process. But then a lot of the organizations were hesitant on doing this because, number one, there was no clear guidance. Number two, the risk that is involved meant that they had to go in and redo a lot of their processes. But we've had success in going in and implementing these processes within the organization. And as a result, have learned how to tweak our overall validation approach, have learned how to go in and modify some of our approaches and deliverables to account for some of these technologies. And the other piece of it is the investment that needed to be made by the organization in highly automated technologies. For the same reason, when I go in and put in a machine learning algorithm into, let's say, a Kappa process, how do I go in and make sure that the process itself is validated? How do I make sure that the technology is actually giving me consistent results day in and day out? So what happened is the industry sat down and said there has to be a better way to do this. And that's where computer system assurance came into picture. It basically started looking at how do we, one, lower the cost, and two, help drive value for the business. This was done by focusing on the critical areas of the process, where you would have gone in and tested every single requirement 3 or 4 times. CSA now looks at going in and testing certain requirements at certain times of your life cycle, certain phases of your life cycle, at certain rigor and depth, which therefore gives us the ability to drive results faster. From a supplier quality perspective, I talked about the higher cost, right? It's obviously when you start implementing systems that you're purchasing from vendors, there's a lot of costs associated with them. And it also was determined that there is the impact of not implementing it correctly is a direct correlation to the quality of the process that you're following. And obviously the post-market patient safety aspect of it. If your system is not doing what it is intending to do, there is going to be a negative impact on your overall patient safety because of the products that you're releasing using that system, for example. So in one of the surveys that was conducted, fewer than 1 out of every 5 businesses had a supplier quality management strategy. Right? Now, while that is alarming, what is actually good nowadays is that a lot of organizations have started to go in and start looking at what can I do to make sure I leverage my supplier management process to the maximum. So they've gone in and used documentation that is being generated. They've upped their supplier audit functions. They've gone in and started conducting more rigorous and frequent supplier audits. They've gone in and incorporated scorecards into their overall supplier quality programs to be able to prioritize suppliers, for example. They've gone in and started integrating data and processes across their supplier network. And that gives them the ability to become proactive rather than reactive. And finally, going in and putting in SLAs and some cost recovery systems as part of their overall supplier process is we will bring you on as a supplier if you are able to share with us the burden of non-conformances. So you're holding your suppliers more accountable to your overall quality expectations rather than just saying, you give it to us, we'll check and we'll figure out and we'll come back to you if there is an issue. So making them more part of it. So having talked through all of these, I think what is critical is understanding what that road to digital quality looks like, right? One, we've spent enough time on leveraging digital technologies and making sure as we start looking at technologies such as cloud, machine learning, natural language processing, artificial intelligence, digital twins, use that to be able to drive efficiencies and optimization within the quality function. Use that to your advantage. The second piece is making sure that there is a clear understanding and a view of the horizon on what those trends are from a regulatory perspective. The FDA and other regulatory agencies across the globe are working hand in hand with industry to draft guidances and regulations concerning these upcoming technologies. So make sure your voice is heard as an organization that is in that process, right? I mean, all of these regulations and guidances are put for public feedback. Make sure that we provide that feedback and try and shape those regulations in a way that you can accept them. The other piece is making sure that we have use cases that we can deploy to show the advantage that we can get from this technology. No business is going to invest in something unless you have a clear ROI. And these use cases will show the business the ROI. And the ROI is also established more clearly when you start talking to areas within the industry which are more conducive, right? So for example, go in and start looking at data-intensive processes, CAPAs, non-conformances, deviation management, supplier management. These processes involve a lot of data. So use that to your advantage and use technology to your advantage to be able to go in and start transforming within that. And the last thing is also make sure that you're talking to others from the industry, right? Make sure that you're part of industry groups, you're part of the GAMP, you're part of ISPE and other groups within the industry itself where you can exchange ideas with your peers. And lastly is make sure that there's a fit for purpose use case, right? Don't go into a use case just because another organization is doing it or somebody's telling you, oh, we've done this before, so you should use it. Try and spend time to make sure that you can use those use cases to demonstrate the power of data and also the impact it has on the business processes, because that's when your ROI becomes very clear. So once we've made that decision to move, what are some of the benefits that we will see, right? Number one, from a data quality perspective, reconciliation. As I mentioned, there is disparate data, there is lack of systems talking to each other, there is limited supplier and product related data that you really can have access to. So making sure that all of that data is reconciled, there is a single source of truth that you can refer to, and using that data, you now can build upon your metrics, right? Your KPIs, your quality scores, and say, because there is this single source of truth, my metrics actually represent a true view into what my organization looks like from a quality perspective. And finally, transparency, right? Being able to leverage data across these silos or across even your suppliers, making sure that the supplier understands what your quality requirements are, making sure that the supplier provides you the data in a frequent fashion so that you can make those decisions more easily and more realistically. The second is obviously the technology and the people, right? So you're going from ensuring compliance to actually managing compliance, which has a very powerful shift, right? You're basically going in and saying, I know that I'm compliant. My processes now will help me manage the compliance rather than going in and checking for compliance every time. And going in and creating, as I said, the business impact. That will only happen when you start investing in customer-facing solutions, where the impact is clear, impact is certain, and impact is very ROI driven. Making those informed decisions when you talk to your business partners and your suppliers, and keeping those communication channels open. Right? You have to be able to talk to all the other groups within the organization and outside of the organization as well, to make sure that your quality and your roadmap is understood and adhered to. And all of this obviously needs a framework, right? We talked about centralizing your data. So you need to have a data framework that centralizes all of that data, and also start moving from the pilot phase, right? We talked about use cases. Use cases are pretty much the pilot phase, but you cannot sit in a pilot phase all the time. You have to have a framework that moves you from the pilot phase into bigger and larger projects and programs. So how do we do that? We talk about a digital quality framework. And there's about 6 aspects that I just wanted to spend a few minutes on. The first is EQMS, or an electronic quality management system. It provides you the data, it provides you the interfaces, and provides you the mobility that you need as you cut across systems and processes. The second thing is you need to start transitioning from a deliverable-based frame of thinking to a data-based thinking. So as you start building your centralized data model, data becomes core into your decision-making. You're no longer worried about generating that deliverable, but making sure that the data that you generate out of these processes is something that you can use to support validation, support audits, support whatever you might need. The third thing is having a connected landscape, right? Linking the systems across the enterprise, whether it is a supplier, whether it's a product, whether it's a process, whatever you might have, making sure that they are connected, because then you're able to make decisions based on a holistic data set rather than siloed data sets. Number 4 is making sure that the data is available. There was a lot of issues earlier on where data was restricted, access to data was restricted based on where you are and what you what your role was. While we are not saying remove all the roles, what we're saying is make sure the right data is available to the right people to make the right decisions. So based on the role, based on the process area, based on the region or the location, whatever it might be, make sure the data is available for them to make that decision. And decisions can only be made when you empower your organization. So whether it's people, technology, or the process, you make them empowered, right? You're making the decision-making process easier for them, giving them all the right tools at the right time to be able to make that decision. And finally, in our mind, as we start getting into data-driven organizations, is the analytics. You start looking at what the power of analytics can really give you, right? When you start leveraging data to move, like I said, from a reactive to a proactive organization. You start using that data to move away from just a spreadsheet which says, here is the number of deviations, to basically saying, here is the deviations that are occurring in this particular system, in this particular region, so what is going on? Those insights that we talked about, right? To be able to make that connection, that's where analytics comes in. So when you start putting all of this together, when you start looking at the framework itself, there is a very marked impact on your overall cost of quality. And based on surveys that were conducted, the cost of poor quality, when you have a digital quality framework that you put in place and you follow, drops by close to 2 to 3%, which is huge, given the amount of money that is spent on maintaining and maintaining quality and compliance across the organization. So what does that give us, right? Finally, from a digitization and quality 4.0 perspective. Number one, you shift from your traditional quality to quality 4.0 at a much faster pace, right? As the industry is moving, you don't want to be left behind. You want to be at the forefront. And how do we do that? You start defining the business benefits and the plan for achieving those through digitization opportunities. We talked about use cases. We talked about pilots and the business value. So you start defining that. And once you start doing that, you start getting into the pilots. Now, I talked about an RPA deployment for identification and reporting of CAPAs, for example. While it's more data-centric, it's a simple RPA deployment rather than AI, where you want to go in, for example, start looking at all your adverse event reports that are coming in and trying to make decisions based on what you're seeing. That's AI. But for you to get there, you need to start simple. You need to be able to start with something which is at the pilot level. And what does digitization do overall? It provides an opportunity to use the technology to drive optimization and efficiency across the enterprise. Because as long as we are able to bring in digitization, as long as we are able to show the ROI, the business will spend the money, right? And when you start spending money, there is a lot of different ROIs that you can bring in when you start going in on the digitization and the quality 4.0 aspects of it. You also want to go in and leverage the experience of those outside of your organization. I talked about this briefly earlier. Talk to your peers in the industry, talk to industry groups, talk to organizations such as ISPE, talk to your vendors, talk to what they're seeing in the marketplace, right? Because your vendors and your suppliers are actually not just your own, they're also talking to a lot of your peers and in the same areas. So talk to them, and build that use case for digitization. And obviously focus on the culture of quality, right? Not just in one area, but across the organization and across the enterprise, all the way from the leadership down. Everybody has to be speaking the same language, making sure that quality is front and center of what we're trying to do. And all of this is not possible if you're not able to really define the value, right? And the value in all of this is improvement in the quality, efficiency, and the cost. As long as we are able to establish those elements, the conversations get easier, and conversations are more involved, right? More people are on board when you start having these kind of conversations. Finally, I think we'll close with this, and then we'll open up for some questions as well, is in our mind, digital quality is no longer a differentiator, right? It has become an imperative. And why is that so? Because this is critical to be able to propel the organization, utilizing the power of data and making sure that we're using technology to our advantage, making sure that technology is being brought in more to bring in optimization rather than just going in and saying we are automating, quote unquote, right? So we'll take a pause. Kevin, if there's any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer.
Hi, Vamsi. Yes, I'm here, and I assume you're hearing me okay?
Yes.
All right, great. Yeah, obviously, thank you for a great presentation. We do have some questions that we want to tackle on the floor. And again, I want to reiterate to everybody who's online, if you weren't there right at the beginning, that we encourage you to ask questions using the Q&A panel there. Should be on the right-hand side of your screen. The first one that popped up, Vamsi, was you mentioned several forces that are impacting quality. Which one of them should be tackled first, in your opinion?
Great question. I think what should be tackled first depends on the overall organizational maturity that we're dealing with. But what I have seen more important is the data aspect of it, right? Making sure that you're breaking down the silos and you're using technology to your advantage and using data to make decisions.
Great. All right, let me see what we've got here. Okay. How are you seeing newer technologies being used to improve quality, things like AI and machine learning?
I did talk about a few examples, but let me just reiterate. As we start getting into some of these newer technologies, the application of those technologies is, not to sound cliched, but is limitless. I've been on programs where we've used RPA, for example, to sort through kappa data and NC, non-conformance data, to actually go in and see which areas what is happening. I've been on projects where we've gone in and implemented AI, where we actually were looking at the adverse events coming in through social media, Twitter and Facebook and things like that, to prioritize and establish the risk of each one of those feeds coming in. And I've also gone in and started looking at automation from a validation lifecycle perspective, right? If you were to have an all-in-one system where you generate documents, you have workflows, you have your security, you are able to link all of your requirements to your testing and therefore create your trace matrix all in one rather than creating 10 different documents in 10 different places, that in itself is a huge saving. So as you start building your roadmap towards digitization, what is critical is understanding your current space and establishing those pilots, as I mentioned, as to what can bring in the maximum benefit and value to the organization, and therefore building upon them as you start implementing some of those pilots.
That's great. Appreciate that. I think we'll probably take, let me see here. I think we'll probably take one more question. Bear with me here. What's the best approach to get everyone in the company on board with a digital transformation project?
I mean, organizational change management itself is a huge topic, right? I mean, people have been doing things in a way and they have learned how to do things in a way over time. And they're obviously very comfortable. And when you start bringing in digitization, there has to be a lot of learning and sometimes unlearning and relearning because of the technology or because of a change that you bring about in a particular process or because of the way that you're doing a certain process. So the best way to do it based on experience is making sure that the message is clear, message is understood, and there is enough opportunity for everybody to absorb and question the aspects of that roadmap that we talked about, right? Having a good roadmap in place, saying here is where we are headed, here is why we are headed, and here is the value that we intend to bring to both the organization from a quality perspective as well as from a business value perspective. So making sure that everybody is on board in terms of the value that is being delivered, and also understanding that it cannot take forever, right? The business is not going to sit and wait for us forever as a quality organization to bring them that value. So making sure that people understand the timelines and giving organizations or groups within the organization the opportunity to drive some of those pilots, right? To think outside the box, so to speak, and see what those use cases are based on their knowledge of the process and the data that is involved. So I think a combination of all of those, change management, pilots, understanding and training on the roadmap and the strategy, and the ability to drive the execution based on their knowledge and ability as well.
That's great. Well, I think that'll probably wrap up the amount of questions that we'll have time to take today. So obviously, Vamsi, I want to thank you for putting together a great presentation as always, and certainly encourage the folks that have joined us today to check out Astrix online at astrix.com, astrixinc.com, and you'll find a wealth of other content that we have available on there around quality, compliance, etc. So, with that, Vamsi, if you want to have a few parting words, I guess we'll turn it back to our host and wrap up.
Thank you, Kevin. So I think finally what we want to leave you with is digitization is something that we cannot put off any further, but making sure that the digitization aspects of a process are clearly understood and leveraging technology to bring in the optimization and efficiency that we talked about will definitely give us a head start as we start thinking through quality 4.0 and therefore compliance overall. Thank you so much for all of you who have joined, and we look forward to hearing from you soon.
Fantastic. Thanks, Vamsi, and obviously thanks, Kevin, as well. To everyone that's joined, you will receive an email in 24 hours' time telling you how you can access the on-demand version of this webinar. But if you did want to access it between then, you can also go through our website, which is www.pmi-live.com. But on our side, we look forward to sharing all of our further webinars within this space with you. So do remember to keep an eye out. And thanks again for joining, everyone. And I hope you all have a fantastic day.